Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. Wow, this is it. Friday before we vote. Hopefully you're already voting. Early voting in so many states, mail by ballot. And if you haven't already registered and you still can, do it. Meantime, we are getting ready for our election night special. We will have the full night covered for you right here. More than 20 of your favorites will be joining us. It's all the MK Show regulars, plus some special guests as well. Live on SiriusXM Triumph Channel 111, as well as at youtube.com/Megyn Kelly. We start at 8. It's going to be a wild night. We're going to bring you the truth and analysis that you won't find anywhere else. We will not be spinning you either way. I've been doing these elections a long time. A long time. You remember that night I walked down the hallway at Fox News and confronted Karl Rove, who was upset that Fox News was calling Ohio for Barack Obama and the presidency in 2012? That's because I'm no bullshit, and I don't care who gets upset. We'll be doing that on Tuesday night. If you want to know what's real, what's true without the spin, tune in, because I care much more about being right than I do about being loved, which I think is something you should want in a journalist and certainly on election night. But for now, it's the final weekend before Election Day, and prepare yourself for all sorts of hysterical nonsense from the left and the media. It's insane what they're doing right now. I mean, it is all hands on deck to try to throw anything they can at Donald Trump. Now they're trying to say that he called for the murder of Liz Cheney on stage with Tucker Carlson last night. It's an outrageous lie. And it's amazing how many in the media are willingly participating in it, spreading it, rolling around like pigs in shit in it. I'm sorry, but it's amazing. The sacrifice of credibility, of any pretense of honesty. Another person who was with Donald Trump and Tucker last night, who happens to be one of the strong, intelligent women around Trump, that in another story, Mark Cuban conveniently fails to see, is Nicole Shanahan. She was on not long ago. You may remember she is, of course, RFKJ's running mate. They were running together, and then he suspended his campaign. And she is host of the Back to the People podcast. Last night in Arizona, right on stage, she voted for Trump for the first time. And she joins me now for an exclusive interview on the reasons why. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. Am I Racist? The Daily Wire's box office hit comedy and the #1 grossing documentary of the decade is now available to stream exclusively on Daily Wire Plus. From the same team that brought you the cultural phenomenon, What is a Woman? Comes their next big question, Am I Racist? In this hilarious and revealing film, Matt Walsh goes deep undercover infiltrating the bizarre world of DEI. He gets the most powerful figures in this race-hustling establishment to say all the quiet parts out loud, exposing the absurdity of modern corporate and institutional diversity practices. And now you can witness the collapse of DEI from the comfort of your own home. But here's the catch. You can only watch Am I Racist with the Daily Wire Plus membership. So don't miss out. Head to dailywire.com/subscribe and use code DEI to get 35% off your new annual membership. That's dailywire.com/subscribe, and be sure to use code DEI for 35% off your subscription. Am I Racist is streaming now exclusively at Daily Wire Plus. Nicole, welcome back to the show. So it's a big thing to be a Democrat who has been led by the media to believe that Donald Trump is evil incarnate, to then find yourself actually filling in the bubble for Donald Trump. And we talked a bit about your evolution the last time you were here, but how did it feel and why did you do it?
Last night was a big moment. It was my first time at a Trump rally, my first time at a Trump event, and there were over 20,000 people in the crowd. And being backstage, looking out on to these faces of my fellow Americans, it was very abundantly clear that I was in the right place and that the message had to be one of unity, and it had to be led with an apology. I think that what has happened in this country is that we have allowed the media to turn good people against good people, to create chaos, to create fear of one another, It's been just a storm of using lies to create discontent and instability. And so I going out there yesterday was something that I think could have only happened had Bobby suspended his campaign and brought millions of people into the middle to shake hands on both sides of the aisle. To remember very clearly what it means to be an American and to believe in one's own goodness and the ability to heal and make amends. The crowd last night was so open to that. And I'd love to see a similar effort with those who are currently aligning themselves on the left. But I will say, as you pointed out, the media is making that almost impossible. It's an echo chamber on the left. It's an echo chamber of hate, lies, and fear right now.
It's an all-out assault on Donald Trump and those who would support him. Hit pieces dropping every day on people like RFKJ. They've already been telling us for months that he's some sort of a nutcase who, would get people killed. Meanwhile, his whole life has been spent trying to help children in particular, but all of us, from the pollutants in our air and our water and so on. And now they've taken it to just an 11 on Donald Trump. We'll get to the Liz Cheney thing and what they're doing there, but I want to start with you because you are a woman supporting Trump, and I am too. And I really think that the Mark Cuban response, his comment the other day, is so offensive. And yet I bet that viewpoint is held by a lot of the Democrats now trying to champion women in this race, trying to act like they champion women and the Democrat Party champions women. Mark Cuban makes the following comment about women who support Trump.
Donald Trump, you never see him around strong, intelligent women, ever. It's just that simple. They're intimidating to him. He doesn't like to be challenged by them. And, Nikki Haley will call him on his nonsense with reproductive rights and how he sees and treats and talks about women. I mean, he just can't have her around. It wouldn't work.
I think Stormy is intelligent. I don't think that's 100%. She's very smart. Yeah, Stormy.
He means is like,
but he has power
on stage and stuff.
So strong, intelligent women are intimidating to Trump, and he won't have any of them around. Here's just a little bit of the response by some strong, intelligent women to Mark Cuban. Watch.
This is so profoundly offensive. I worked for Donald Trump. I consider myself a strong woman. I consider those around me strong women.
I gotta say, I have known you and respected you and loved you for a really long time. And what you just said there is disrespectful, and it crosses the line.
Recognize this place? This is the ellipse, where presently a strong, intelligent woman is speaking without a teleprompter.
Cuban's words are mean, sad, and misogynistic. And the left can't even define what a woman is.
I worked for President Trump for 2.5 years. Democrats tried to tear me down. President Trump empowered me and every other woman in America.
I'm licensed in 4 states. I graduated college in 3 years. And your left-wing media and your rhetoric, and you're putting women down. See, President Trump doesn't do that. He surrounds himself with strong women like me. So Mark Cuban, you can go to hell.
Pretty remarkable and strong response. Today he's trying to add context, but failing to. We'll talk about that in a minute. But what did you make of the comments, Nicole?
Look, I've been following Mark Cuban's career for a little bit, and I will say he hasn't exactly done anything impressive as of late. First of all, his carbon credit crypto scheme completely tanked. And now he's, a front person for an organization that is so blind to what is actually going on in America. I oftentimes don't see him around smart, strong women either. So, I think maybe he's projecting a little bit of his own recent experience in life. But, I will say that there are, Susie Wiles, who runs Donald Trump's campaign. I had the opportunity to sit down with her for a little bit yesterday, and she is one of the brightest, strongest women I've ever met. She's in her 60s. She's so focused. Donald Trump is surrounded by brilliant people and women who really stand for something other than celebrity and a paycheck. In fact, many of the women around him truly are there for the right reasons. And, the left right now is parading celebrities around. And I know a lot of these celebrities. I've been around them many times. And they don't really have a backbone. Last night on stage, I talked about being at a celebrity party where this young woman fell on the ground and passed out, likely due to a drug overdose. Jessica Alba was standing right there and wanted nothing to do with it. She was trying to keep her hands clean, backed away, and kind of rolled her eyes in disgust. And I got on the ground and tried to help this young woman up. Luckily, she came to. And I talk about this on stage yesterday as this feeling I had looking in her eyes and just wondering what she was doing with her life. And just wanting her to be well and to find the kind of confidence where she could extract herself from an environment where literally no one cared about her in that moment. And that is the environment of these celebrities that they live in every single day. The party must go on, the business must go on. And it's a very cruel and cold environment. It's not one that breeds the kind of hope and love and community that I've been seeing around Donald Trump. And, I know Donald Trump comes from a party boy background a bit. He didn't drink or do drugs, but, he was very social. But I think that right now this election really is about the people. It's the people who are leading this movement to make America healthy again and to make America great again. I mean, you could use whatever acronym you want. It's people who believe in something other than transactional celebrity. And it really is about harmonizing and valuing and prioritizing the things that make life meaningful. And so, I think just to answer your question simply, mothers really do know that feeling. It's this connection of wanting to be present for no other reason than love of family. And, there are mothers on the left too, and really incredible women. But I think that the community right now is looking for something a little bit more authentic. The community of just the American populace trying to refine itself.
So well said. It's amazing to me that his closing message on behalf of Kamala Harris, because Cuban's been very vocal for her, is this, that Donald Trump is afraid of strong women and that no intelligent, strong woman would associate with him, couldn't be around him, notwithstanding just some of the ones we showed in that montage, not to mention all the other strong, intelligent women who are going to vote for him. As always, they try to reduce everything to gender or to Trump's alleged sexism. And what I see when I look at Donald Trump, because trust me, I've been through the Trump, laundry washing machine where you get banged around and, knocked out the other side. And what I have learned is that Trump is an equal opportunity offender. If you come for him, he will go after you. And what they're trying to say now is that the fact that he hasn't used Nikki Haley on the campaign trail is evidence of sexism, as opposed to evidence of he doesn't like her. And a lot of the MAGA base doesn't believe in her messaging, which is very neocon-y. And part of the Republican Party is still neocon-y. And that is why she continued getting votes, even when she was no longer running. And there are many, including, I know, reportedly Tucker Carlson, who don't believe this would be helpful to Trump with the main base of the party to have her out there. It's a strategic decision. But by the way, how many campaign events have you seen Ron DeSantis at? His most ardent rivals, the ones who spent months on stage attacking him viciously while they tried to get the nomination themselves, have both endorsed Trump, but haven't been on the campaign trail for him. And no one tried to turn it into something about gender, sexism, being anti-Italian, whatever you want to say with respect to Ron DeSantis. The fact that Nikki Haley's gender has to come into it speaks to Mark Cuban's sexism and no one else's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will say the Nikki Haley comments don't make a lot of sense to me. Nikki Haley is her own camp, very much, like you said, aligned with companies and contractors that are part of this military industrial complex. We're very well aware of that. And that is why I believe that there hasn't been the same kind of relationship that, for example, Vivek Ramaswamy has forged with Team Trump. And, I think what you see right now around Team Trump are a lot of individuals who are in this because they're so laser focused on the issues and new policies they'd like to see enacted, decoupling corporate interest from our agencies. I mean, this is a really, really big focus of the people that Trump has surrounded himself with. And really, I am surprised, and I am really glad and impressed that he has carried that promise through. Donald Trump has carried this promise through of surrounding himself with these people who are willing to put everything on the line to fix our government institutions, to clean out the cronyism, to get good people in place that aren't going to sell out the American people because it's just easier to do so than to fight. Fighting is very, very hard right now. These institutions, just from a practical standpoint, are going to be very hard to clean up and to clean up their balance sheets. But then there's this whole social level. There is the weaponization of the media. There is weaponization and real sabotage in getting this work done well. So it's going to take bold people, people who are both smart, savvy, able to recognize their partnerships and hold boundaries, and people who are going to work tirelessly. And that is who this team now represents. Trump said it himself. He couldn't quite do it in his first term, but he's got the tools this time to do it in a second.
Your statements and the way you described what is now currently the MAGA movement reminded me of what Zachary Levi, actor from Shazam, said on the show the other day, which went viral. And he was very honest about the fact that he's not voting for Donald Trump. What did I say? Zachary Levi. That's what I said, right? Anyway, that he's not voting for Donald Trump. He's voting for the team around Donald Trump. And Donald Trump's fine too, but he's just saying that he understands when you vote for Donald Trump, you get now more than just Trump. You get some of the most incredible minds in the world today. I mean, an incredible team of rivals, however you want to phrase it. But I think a lot of people can relate to that. And when I think about Wednesday morning, if we know by Wednesday morning, what I would be most sad about, right, if Trump were to lose, it would be the loss of this new burgeoning America, a group that's, yes, concerned about our health, about the size of government, about largesse amongst the elites at the cost of the working and middle class, about children and the trans insanity and what we're doing to them, cutting them up, about the border and the women who will die. Those are the things I think of. I've never been in, forgive me, but the cult of Trump. I've never been that person, as the audience knows. But I do believe in what he's offering and those around him.
Mm-hmm. I do too. And I think that, if we're looking at the numbers, honestly, I think that 70% of America sees that and they want that. And if they could get over some of those hang-up lies that they're being fed, especially around abortion, and we can talk about that and what the real statistics are around abortion clinics and maternal health. But I think that 70% of America wants exactly what you just shared, and they believe fully in their hearts that a Trump win come next week will deliver the action items that are going to get us to a safer America, a healthier America, America with less corruption, an America that prioritizes that which is, sacred human experience. And so, people are seeing some of this insanity. They can't reconcile it. And rather than, giving up on this vision, I think that this vision carries through. And the lawfares, it's already started. They are trying to now sue Elon Musk for some of the actions of his PAC. And it's relentless. But at the same time, the energy and support, the ground reality of what is actually being felt across this country, even here in California, even in the Bay Area. I joke that in the state of California, the only people currently left in the closet are Trump supporters because you can't just come out as a Trump supporter here yet. But I will say that there's a lot of people here in the state of California who really, really want all of those things that this team that he surrounded himself with will deliver if given the opportunity.
Well, and a friend of mine here was telling me she's on a text thread with a bunch of her LA friends where she used to live. And that one person started some comments about abortion, abortion, abortion. And then she issued just a brief response about, okay, maybe, but by the way, it's a states' rights issue now. It's really not in the hands of the president any longer or ever, really. Immigration and safety and all these other things. And she was afraid to text this because she knew what the LA text chain was going to say in response. And what she told me was, to her surprise, all these other women on the text chain sided with her, either openly on the text chain or texted her. And that's in California, Nicole. I do think that more and more women are starting to get it. And I know there's a gender gap in this race and that more women are going for Kamala than they are for Trump. But I do think more and more women are starting to understand that, before our daughters can ever make a decision about abortion, they have to live a well and safe life. They have to not be poisoned by their water and their food. They have to not be hurt by a boy playing against them on the basketball or volleyball court. They have to be able to be safe walking through the city to go to school and not be killed by criminals let out by soft on crime DAs. They have to be safe when they are out at night with friends and not get murdered or attacked or raped by illegals long before they're ever going to have to make an abortion decision. And even worst case scenario for said girls in this country, there will always be half of the states that allow this procedure now that it has been relegated back to a statewide issue. Those are just truths.
Mm-hmm. Those are absolute truths, and the data supports it. The data supports that, the conflating of what they call life-saving care in the event of a abruption, which is usually a placental caused bleed in the uterus. This is what Christy Teigen claims, that you can now not get safely due to Donald Trump. I mean, there's literally no bigger lie that is being shared right now than that claim that women can't access life-saving care in the event of a miscarriage. That is just a lie. There's no data to support that. If they want to make the claim, and this is even stretching, that the states in which don't have abortion clinics don't have as many trained surgeons who can do a D&E or a D&C operation, maybe you can make that claim, but I haven't seen that data at all. In fact, there are trained Stanford oncological OBGYNs who are moving to Texas, because it's actually, they just want to go to Texas. And so they're pumping out very well trained individuals that are able to perform these life-saving surgeries. If that's what they want to fund, they can do that. There's no laws restricting it. And there's ways to make sure that maternal care is absolutely going in the right direction. But this lie that abortions and life-saving miscarriage care are the same thing, that's what they're trying to do. They're conflating these two very, very different circumstances and trying to claim it's now Donald J. Trump's fault. There's just no data that supports that. And so, to your point about how there are other issues impacting women that statistically are far greater, far greater. There are young women experiencing turbo cancers that are now having to get surgery to remove their breasts in their early 40s. I mean, in my community, 6 women that have had that surgery in the last 2 years. So it is, there are falsehoods in their narrative that are being felt, by our communities, and we have the ability to address it. Finally, if we have the right administration going in next year, we can actually address the real issues, not the made-up ones.
Think about these moms who are so focused on abortion, which will never be illegal in the United States of America. It will never be illegal. The only possible way it would ever become illegal on a nationwide basis is if the Democrats make the case, if Kamala wins, and if the Dems win the House and the Senate, if the Democrats make the false case that Congress has the ability to regulate this issue, which it doesn't. It doesn't. It derives most of its powers from the Commerce Clause, and if it's not generally related to the Commerce or Taxing Clause, generally Congress cannot do it. That it would be considered congressional overreach because it's a matter for the states. If the Democrats make the case, if they attain power, that they do have the right and pass a nationwide Roe regime, yes, that could potentially open the door to a Republican administration coming in once it's obtained power in the Senate and the House, and then implementing a federal ban, which is why it is an incredibly stupid thing to campaign on, as Kamala Harris is. But I predict either way, whether the Dems try to do that or the Republicans try to do that, it will go up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and such a law will be struck down as an overreach by Congress. I've been looking into this. There's only one law that they tried to do on a nationwide basis when it comes to abortion that comes to mind, and it's the partial birth abortion law, which was upheld by Congress, but no one involved was challenging it by saying the Congress didn't have the ability in the first place to pass the law. No one even raised that issue. So it's still ripe for Supreme Court to say Congress doesn't have this power at all. I believe that's how this will go down if anybody is ever so bold as to actually try to legislate abortion on a countrywide basis from the federal level. So there you have that. Okay, but meanwhile, RFKJ and you and now Trump would like to take young girls and the moms who are so worried about their abortion rights and say to those moms, you're poisoning your daughter every day. You don't mean to be, but you are. You are. Take one look at the Halloween candy she got last night and do a little Google search on the ingredients. Mm-hmm. But you don't even have to think about, Halloween candy we kind of know is bad for us. Look at your Cheerios. Look at the orange juice that you give her. Look at the pasta and what pesticides it's been sprayed with prior to it getting to your daughter's plate. And by the way, 10 times all of that when they go to school. Never mind if they're on a low-income supplemental diet, funded by the federal government. It'll be all terrible stuff, preservative-laden, pesticide-laden. So those moms need to understand the danger is present. What RFKJ, what Trump are about to fight against. It's present. It's every day, and it's in every meal, and it's in every home. Nonetheless, you get hit pieces like this from CNN, freaking out about Bobby's potential role in a Trump administration. Trump's plan to radically remake government with RFKJ and Elon Musk by CNN. This is yesterday. They talk about 2025 as though Trump hasn't disavowed that and denied having anything to do with it. But then they say there's an equally radical and expansive government reformation plan coming out of Trump's own mouth with heterodox figures like RFKJ, where he would be given free rein to, quote, go wild on the health safety system, and Elon would be enabled to start from scratch with the federal workforce. Then they go on to suggest that Kennedy compared vaccine requirements with the Nazi Germany era, claiming Anne Frank was in a better situation. That is so out of context. It was a rally at which he was talking about censorship and government forcing us to do certain things. And by the way, he apologized for that, but he didn't even need to. It was being used against him unfairly. And then they hit him for his wild conspiracy theories about chemicals in the water allegedly making children gay or transgender. By the way, there are hormones in our water that we do need to be concerned about, and talking about his stance on vaccines. This leads me, long-windedly, forgive me, Nicole, to one of your Maha ads, which we talked about last time, are the best in the business, and one that you call Dear Dad. It references your own daughter. For the audience, take a listen.
Dear Dad, I woke up to a text from you that said, I want you to know that even though we don't agree on who the better presidential candidate is, I still love and respect your choices. Dad, I love and respect you too. You and Mom are now 75, and you have 4 grandkids. Your middle grandchild, born healthy, but after receiving her childhood vaccinations, now has an autism diagnosis, living in an almost silent world. I've come to learn that the meals you fed us when we were children, they're not the same anymore. If I were to put the same dinner on the table that you did back on those busy work nights, those same foods are now filled with chemicals. The truth is, there is only one candidate that has aligned themselves with stopping this. There is only one candidate who's going to give our kids a chance at a healthy existence. Trump is working with Bobby and Nicole to do just that. Make America healthy again.
Can you explain that ad, Nicole?
That was written by my sister-in-law, Lily. And I read it, and it was perfection. She wrote it one afternoon. She's an attorney. She's a strong woman who's voting for Trump as well. She's an attorney in Arizona and Phoenix. And she's a working mom, 3 kids. And she came to this through her baby Jack, her youngest, who after receiving his MMR vaccine was diagnosed with GB, which is a debilitating, very quick onset disease. Some kids don't make it through it. Luckily, Jack did. But Jack was taken to the hospital on life support. At some point, doctors didn't know if he would make it out, and he, thank God, did. But this is a story that, unfortunately, many moms can tell you about, and they can tell you the details of what went down. And no one has given these moms a voice. No one's given these dads a voice. And for the first time, we're doing so using a political platform, because this might be our best chance to get it heard. And it's why I joined the campaign. I just kept meeting too many families who had experienced this. I had met too many kids struggling with chronic disease. And it was just shocking to me that nobody in the Democratic Party was willing to acknowledge it. I don't understand how that's possible.
When RFKJ came on our show after being banned everywhere, and we did our 4 hours with him, we spent 2 hours, not on the COVID vaccine, but on vaccines and his positions on vaccines. And he made himself perfectly clear. And you want to see somebody who's able to back up every single opinion he's got, go watch that episode. We'll give you the number. We've offered it before, but we'll give you the number, where this is the exact issue we went through. And he's got a very full-throated, considered examination of the vaccines. He says he's not anti-vaccine, but he's obviously got some concerns with what we're putting in them unnecessarily, episode 282, and with the amount of toxins that we are now overloading our children with. And he went through, it's not just autism, it's tics, and it's ADHD or ADD. And there's just a list of ailments now that all of the moms know, and the dads too, are way more prevalent with the children than they ever were before. Could you please, moms out there, please, moms who are obsessed with abortion and who are about to pull the lever for Kamala Harris, think about your child's health right now. And don't jump right to this fictional imagined need for a future abortion. It's just, Nicole, I feel like the moms aren't thinking about that because there's only one health message the media shoves down people's throats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost as if the media is brainwashing us. And I think that if you're a mom, you have to trust your eyes and your ears, and you have to trust that little bit inside of you that feels that nervousness for your child's future. It is happening. You have to trust your instinct. Just seeking out organic foods is not going to be enough. You have to educate yourself. And I understand it's hard to find good information today, and that the medical journals will say many of these claims have been debunked. But that unexplained GI issue that your child has, that just nothing seems to shake it. The kid in the class who randomly experienced an unexplained seizure, and the wide sweeping fevers that are coming through, or the school down the road here in Woodside, whose pre-K class has so many, neurodivergence all of a sudden. This is not random. This is explainable, but the information is being kept from you intentionally. So you have to trust yourselves to know deeply that this is not how childhood was for you. It's not how it ought to be for your children. And if we're thinking generationally, if your children are having issues now, imagine it compounded over 2 or 3 decades. Try to imagine your child as a 20-something-year-old or a 30-something-year-old with an early cancer diagnosis, because that is the track that this country is on right now. And our children deserve a full life of health, not one that is periodic and marred with these acute and chronic issues.
And the thought about Bobby joining the Trump administration, and I don't care whether he's a secretary in the cabinet or not. I think there's a general feeling that he wouldn't get confirmed, and Trump doesn't care. He'll use him as an outside advisor, but his advice could be really important. The thought of him getting in there and helping us so that it's not, Nicole Shanahan and Megyn Kelly and Casey Means and Callie Means and all these other great warriors in the Maha space running around trying to tell everybody, this is what you should do to your water filter. And this is the kind of, shopping you should do. And this is what you should avoid, which the average person has zero time for. Zero time. And even if they make the time, then finding the right products it feels next to impossible and totally daunting, to where you get to like, fine, I give up. But the thought of having somebody like that in there with control over government agencies that are pushing these poisons on us is a light. It's like new possibility in, wait, I don't have to work that hard. Someone's going to make it ideally impossible, but realistically, at least a lot harder for them to shove this stuff in everything and control messaging, including within the medical establishment, that it's, quote, healthy or benign or fine.
It's all corruption. Early on in the campaign, the internal message was that corporate capture is responsible for all of this. It's not something that is intractable. Like the minute you start pulling away at the conflicts of interest, the minute you start pulling away at, the corporate lobbyists, and you just restore the agencies to agencies focused on the well-being of the people as a priority, many of these diseases start to fall away. Many of the issues that we're seeing in our children start to fall away. The truth will begin to emerge. We will have accountability in the government once again. Right now, there is virtually none. It is so bad at this point and so overrun with corporate interests that it's actually hard to find any individuals that are willing to stand up and call out an investigation into a member of an agency that maybe has taken a contract they shouldn't have taken. And where's the media? Shouldn't the media be exposing some of these issues? Conflicts of interest are a really big deal. In every profession we have conflicts of interest standards to protect these oaths that people have taken. We see it in medicine. We see it in law. There's some in journalism, but but at the agency level, it's very, very weak right now. And that's all we're saying. That's all we're saying is let's try to clean up this corruption so that we don't have predatory behavior that trickles down into really harmful impacts across our country. And this is not vindictive. This is literally just restoring our agencies to what they were intended to be.
You need look no further than the series Dope Sick to figure out what's happening. We know from our actual history, and we know it was represented so accurately and beautifully in that movie, that the FDA has been captured, that the FDA has got a revolving door with Big Pharma. That is the reason why the warnings on OxyContin were so weak and pathetic for as long as they were, hooking hundreds of thousands of Americans on this deadly drug. And virtually everybody listening to this program right now knows someone or knows someone who was killed as a result. The same people are in control of what's in your food. And the same problem affects so many of these administrative agencies right now that have been captured because these people don't care about what's in your kids' cereal. They care about where they're going when they leave government service and what size pool they can get in their backyard. That's what we need to fight against. And no one's even sounded the alarm on this until the Maha movement, which has just exploded since he endorsed Trump and you guys made this your cause. And I don't know, Nicole, I really feel like divine right order has a hand here. I feel like we talked last time about your history, but you married Sergey, one of the co-founders of Google. You guys got a divorce. You wound up an independently wealthy woman. You could have done anything with your money. You could be sailing in St. Bart's right now with a team of servants feeding you grapes. But you chose not to do that. Like, I really feel like in a way you were chosen. And forgive me, but I almost feel like your daughter's story in this was an important piece. I mean, I hope I'm not overstepping my bounds, but like an important piece to helping you have the right focus and understanding, like maybe we question some of these government narratives, and then you hooked up with RFKJ. And all of this makes me feel like Trump will win, because why else would all of this have happened?
You know, I had a pastor tell me last week, she said, God doesn't waste our pain. And, I think that there is certainly something to be said for the journey I've been on that has forced me in many ways to be bold and brave and to fight for what is right. And, my daughter, she's everything to me. And I will say there has been great challenge and risk and, non-financial expense that I've paid to do this work and that I continue to pay to do this work. It hasn't been an easy environment to be here in Silicon Valley to, co-parent with someone that hasn't quite seen how all of these things impact a child. And I will say that, there is some plan. I do believe that there is a divine plan. And I also think that there's something that happens when people in a group are brave enough to talk about their experiences and their lived experiences. And I think
about when I was on Fox News and we talked about the possibility of vaccine injuries. This is back when I first started as an anchor, 2007. You were not allowed. I mean, they would run out to the set to tell you to shut that down if a guest said anything. This is back in the Jenny McCarthy days when she first started raising questions. And I remember her quote, too many shots too soon. She wasn't saying there should be no vaccines. She said too many too soon. And I remember them telling me, like, you have to push back on that, or they were going to get in trouble. And of course, half of Fox's advertising comes from Big Pharma. Like, it takes a while for you to start to see these connections, but eventually, and I said this to Bobby, and he said the same back to me. I had my kids all vaccinated with all the shots. So did he. That doesn't mean that there aren't legitimate questions to be explored and asked around what's in them, how soon we're giving them, and what the cocktail is, including drugs to prevent against STDs when the child's an hour old. Okay, I want to say this. This is why I think where the Democrats are finishing their message is so ineffective. You mentioned the celebrities. We've seen a host of them come out for Kamala Harris. No one's surprised. Yesterday, we showed that ad suggesting women should tell their husbands that they're voting for Trump, but then they should actually vote for Kamala Harris when they're in the voting booth, narrated by Julia Roberts. Then yesterday, we see J-Lo show up at a Kamala Harris rally and try to pretend that Trump hates Puerto Ricans because of that joke that a comedian told 4 hours before Trump even took the stage at his MSG rally. Here she is.
I remember growing up thinking my president cared about me, cared about my parents, cared about my neighbors and my community. Not just some Americans, but all Americans. I believe that our kids and this wonderfully progressive, innovative, and inclusive young generation deserve that too. And it is in our hands. It's our responsibility to provide that for them. He has consistently worked to divide us. At Madison Square Garden, he reminded us who he really is and how he really feels. It wasn't just Puerto Ricans that were offended that day, okay? It was every Latino in this country. It was humanity and anyone of decent character. I am a mother, I am a sister, I am an actor and an entertainer, and I like Hollywood endings. I like when the good guy, or in this case, the good girl wins.
Okay, so I just want to say one thing on that. First of all, she makes it sound like Donald Trump made the joke, not some comedian hours before him. Second of all, Jennifer Lopez has had 4, count them, 4 failed marriages. Jennifer Lopez is either mother to or stepmother to 2 children who are on the trans spectrum. And that is no accident. This is a Hollywood thing. This is a liberal elite thing where they are handing their children over to the gender cult without any appreciation for how some gender questions are normal. 99% of children grow out of it if you just leave them alone. Socially transitioning them is extremely dangerous. It almost always leads to drugs and then surgeries and depression and potentially suicidality. And this is not a person we should be taking advice from. But your thoughts on how the closing message is he hates Latinos as opposed to any of the serious issues we're discussing.
I will say there was a big turnout of Latinos for Trump last night at the rally in Arizona. And I will say in my Latino community and people I have chatted with, even here in California, they see right through it. They didn't love the joke told by the comedian, but they realized, and they're smart enough, that it did not come from Donald Trump and it was intended as a joke. So I think in terms of being able to decipher through it, these are paid actors. They are paid professionally to say things that somebody else puts in their mouth. And I believe that the American public needs to start seeing that these are not real people sharing real information to the American public. They are actors.
Exactly right. Unlike the mother of Jocelyn Nungare, who is a real person whose 12-year-old was killed by Venezuelan illegal immigrants. Nicole Shanahan, thank you so much. Thank you for everything you've done for the country and in this race.
It's an honor. Thank you, Megyn.
Hope we talk again. Oh, Okay, we'll be right back. Cyber attacks are on the rise, with corporate megastores falling victim to data breaches that could expose your private information. Now these same megastores are lobbying D.C. politicians to pass something called the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. According to our sponsor, Electronic Payments Coalition, this bill could leave you even more vulnerable to credit card cyber attacks, while the megastores pocket billions in additional profits. Learn more at guardyourcard.com and then consider telling Congress to guard your card. The Electronic Payments Coalition says Americans lose when politicians choose. Again, that's guardyourcard.com. We've got U.S. Senate candidate from the great state of Montana, Tim Sheehy, here later. A lot of hopes being pinned on this guy to potentially bring back a majority for the Republicans. He'll be here in just a bit. But first, I got to get to a few news stories, just you guys and yours truly. Okay, there's a lot to go over. First, I want to tell you about Mark Cuban's attempted clarification of his comments about how strong, intelligent women are never around Trump because Trump can't handle it. He comes out today and offers the following clarification. He says, I'm happy to clarify that I know many strong, intelligent women voting for Trump, including in my extended family. I'm certainly not saying female voters are not smart, strong, and intelligent. I know he has worked with strong, intelligent women like Elaine Chao, Kellyanne, Ivanka, and many others. I stand by my opinion that he does not like being challenged publicly. That's not what you said, Mark Cuban. If you had said that, it would not have been a controversy. We know that about Trump. Hello. Everyone knows that Trump doesn't really like it when people attack him and that he will attack back. But what you said originally was that he doesn't surround himself with women who are strong and intelligent. Let's play it. Let's play it again so we can hear exactly what you said. It was not, he doesn't like being challenged publicly. It was much more than that. Watch.
Donald Trump, you never see him around strong, intelligent women, ever. It's just that simple. They're intimidating to him. He doesn't like to be challenged by them. And, Nikki Haley will call him on his nonsense with reproductive rights and how he sees and treats and talks about women. I mean, he just can't have her around. It wouldn't work.
I think Stormy is intelligent. I don't think that's 100%.
Now they debate whether Stormy Daniels.
He means
okay, whatever.
Yeah.
So that's what he said. You heard it for yourself. You never see him around strong, intelligent women. Never see him around strong, intelligent women, ever. It's just that simple. They're intimidating to him. He doesn't like to be challenged by them. By the way, Trump doesn't like to be needled or challenged really by anybody. I mean, that's just the truth. At least not like in a provocative, personally insulting way as Nikki Haley did. And I understand that. It's a bitter campaign. It always happens. Sometimes you can move on. Sometimes you can't. He has no obligation to put Nikki Haley out on the campaign trail. And you did extrapolate it to women in general and Trump's alleged animus toward them. I can speak to this personally. I think it's safe to say Trump really was not a big fan of yours truly for the better part of a year. But he was very quick to bury the hatchet just as soon as I went and I spoke to him, woman to man, at Trump Tower. And even though I had been critical of him many times thereafter even, he granted me an interview, as you know, last September. And let's be honest, he wasn't that thrilled with that interview. And he went out there on the campaign trail and launched a few barbs my way, which is fine. And since then, we've been totally fine. And his campaign has actually invited me to do a few things, which didn't work out for various reasons. But my point is he is not intimidated by strong, intelligent women. And he is certainly not afraid to be around strong, intelligent women, including those who may have potentially attacked him, though it depends on the woman. Go back and look at Nikki Haley's message in the closing days of the primary. He's not a fan, and he doesn't need to be. As I pointed out, Ron DeSantis has been absent from the campaign trail, too. Sometimes it's tough to get past the barbs thrown. You didn't fix it, Mark Cuban, and shame on you for saying it in the first instance. Okay, we got to talk about Liz Cheney. This woman is leaning hard into perceived victimhood. This woman who wanted us to believe she was like the biggest champion for pro-life policies, who now is endorsing a woman who wants abortion on demand in all 50 states. That's Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney is very, very upset and hurt, you see. She's very, very upset. She's very upset at Charlie Kirk. And she's very upset at Donald Trump for his alleged death threat against her, which is a lie. Here's what happened. Trump went on with Tucker in one of his last campaign events last night. I think it was in Arizona, which is the state that she's not from. She's from Wyoming, out west. She's from the Southwest. So Trump's sitting with Tucker. And you know, Tucker, you may be aware, is not a neocon. He's the opposite of a neocon. And Trump's not a neocon either. And Trump says the following about Liz Cheney. Now, first, I'm going to show you the clip that his critics are sharing. Okay, here it is.
I don't blame him for sticking with his daughter, but his daughter is a very dumb individual, very dumb. She's a radical war hawk. Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? Let's see how she feels about it. You know, when the guns are trained on her face. You know, they're all war hawks when they're sitting in Washington in a nice building saying, oh, gee, let's send 10,000 troops right into the mouth of the enemy. But she's a stupid person. And I used to I'd have meetings with a lot of people, and she always wanted to go to war with people.
Okay, so that was actually the full Trump statement. And what she's doing is pulling the part where he says, let's see her standing there looking 9 guns in the face. See how she handles it. They're clipping that, and they're saying that he threatened to kill her, that he wants her to die. Look at the Drudge headline. They put it up on MSNBC today on Morning Joe. Totally misleading. This is just one example, but all the media is doing this, running around saying that, for the listeners, Trump calls for Cheney's execution. The lower third on Morning Joe is Trump on Liz Cheney. Quote, let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her. Now, you might make the argument this is slightly out of context. First of all, he absolutely did not, quote, call for her execution. And the pull quote that you've put into your lower third, MSNBC, suggests that he wants that to happen, as opposed to the real truth, which was Trump was making a very predictable, usually left-wing argument against war and the warmongers who push them, which is very easy for you to send our sons and daughters into combat. Very different story if you had to face it. How would the decisions be made in this country if you had to do what these men and women have to do? You who might be in charge of the draft. You who's going to be in charge of sending the men and women who are already enlisted in the U.S. military to go fight in what may be a pointless war like Iraq, which was very much supported by the Cheneys. You might remember her dad was vice president at the time. That's the point he's making. Who hasn't made this point in arguing against war? It's you don't have the same skin in the game, and you wouldn't have the same courage as these people you would like to order into battle. That's it. The desperation around this narrative that, in fact, he was trying to get her killed is absolutely patent and dishonest and obnoxious. They don't believe Trump called for Liz Cheney to be executed at all. They just want you to. Here's a montage of some of the coverage.
He's going after Liz Cheney with this dangerous, violent rhetoric.
And on his closing weekend, he's calling for 9 guns to be pointed at her face to execute her.
No,
Donald
he isn't.
Trump is escalating his violent rhetoric, suggesting one of his most prominent critics, the former Congresswoman Liz Cheney, should be fired upon.
The nation is now
She's
on
an
notice.
idiot.
If Americans return Donald Trump to the White House after those comments about our fellow American Liz Cheney, those who voted for him will get what they deserve.
It's a direct threat, not 9 barrels pointed at her, 9 barrels shooting at her.
Literally, some of his supporters take these signals literally. See January 6th. So
you have Donald Trump, who's talking about sending a prominent Republican to the firing squad, and you have Vice President Harris talking about sending one to her cabinet.
Oh my God, the dishonesty. This is beyond. There was Judge Ludig in there for good measure, the guy who's been trying to get Trump booted off of ballots as an insurrectionist, say he's already disqualified himself, totally overruled and rejected by the courts. He's lost his fastball, Judge Ludig. Let's just zero in on one, that ridiculous fool, Casey Hunt, who's now at CNN from MSNBC. Isn't this the one who threw down over, "You will not insult my colleague Jake Tapper on this air"? I get them mixed up because a lot of these anchors seem the same to me. I'm pretty sure she was the one who was like, "You will not insult Jake Tapper before the debate." Let's play the longer Casey Hunt solo and her absolutely false. It is so false to the point where CNN must issue a retraction. It must. Watch.
4 days out from Election Day, and former President Donald Trump is escalating his violent rhetoric, suggesting one of his most prominent critics, the former Congresswoman Liz Cheney, should be fired upon. Let's see how she feels when the guns are trained on her face. Let's sit with that for a moment. And it comes after Trump has raised the specter of using the U.S. military on Americans he calls the enemy within. This is the final battle, he says. He's talking about the election happening 4 days from now. In her closing argument of this campaign, his opponent, Kamala Harris, had this warning.
Donald Trump intends to use the United States military against American citizens who simply disagree with him.
That's where we are 4 days from Election Day in 2024.
Do you want to be a news organization or not? Because if not, you need to be honest about what was said and the context in which it was offered. That's just the way it works. Sorry. I know you really, really, really want Trump to be defeated, but the rules don't change just because of your innate desires. Either you're straight or you're not. It's absolutely stomach turning. And this is the same anchor, by the way, who had the following reaction when Senator Rand Paul was brutally attacked in his front yard, breaking 6 ribs and suffering internal organs damage. This is the same anchor.
New details today on the incident that left Senator Rand Paul with 6 broken ribs. This might be one of my favorite stories, although, of course, we don't want to. Clearly, Senator Paul is still struggling. Paul's neighbor, Renee Boucher, is accused of beating the senator, and GQ reports that lawn care issues may well have been at the heart of the dispute.
One of her favorite stories, how he got beaten, was seriously injured, and was hospitalized. It's so fun. Then another point 2 on the women issue. Trump is taking a beating on the left, amongst some. I'm going to get back to Liz Cheney and Charlie Kirk, too, for saying he wants to protect women, which now the left is pretending this is paternalistic and you're creepy. We don't want you to protect us. You don't speak for me. I would love for Trump to protect me. Not like in my bedroom, and that's not what he was talking about, but in my streets, in my schools, to the extent he's able, by removing the ridiculous Title IX revisions that Joe Biden put in place. With respect to my children's safety and some of the reasons that we talked about with Nicole Shanahan, sure, the president does have room to protect the populace, and who in their right mind would reject it? Here is what Trump actually said that they're making hay out of. SOT 13.
And my people told me about 4 weeks ago, I was saying, no, I want to protect the people. I want to protect the women of our country. I want to protect the women. Sir, please don't say that. Why? They said, we think it's very inappropriate for you to say. So why? I'm president. I want to protect the women of our country. They said. They said, sir, I just think it's inappropriate for you to say. I said, well, I'm going to do it whether the women like it or not. I'm going to protect them. I'm going to protect them from migrants coming in. I'm going to protect them from foreign countries that want to hit us with missiles.
Who in their right mind would object to that? In the original clip, he explains exactly what he meant. Yes. Please protect me and my family from missiles coming in from foreign countries that hate us. Yes, I would love that. Please protect our friends in Israel from attacks by the Hamas lunatics, something that didn't happen during your administration, only happened when we projected weakness through the Afghanistan withdrawal under the Biden administration. I would love that kind of protection. Yes, indeed. Please protect us by ramping down tensions with Russia, the way you did the first 4 years, which is a nuclear power which could annihilate us in about 10 minutes. Sure, it would be great to have better relationships with Russia and the Russians. Do that. Please protect us by closing the southern border and restoring the building of the wall, resuming it ASAP, so that 12-year-olds like Jocelyn don't get murdered in the middle of the night by Venezuelan gangs. Would love it. Please protect people like Lake and Riley, who are in nursing school down in Georgia, trying to learn a skill to actually save lives, who instead wind up dead at the hands of yet another illegal. Please protect us from the fentanyl being shoved across the border at record speed and into the veins of our young college men and women who experiment with a drug here or there. No, they shouldn't, but yes, they do. And instead of just getting extra high, which they think is the risk, they wind up dead. I'd love that kind of protection. Of course, what they're trying to spin it into is Trump wants America to be a Handmaid's Tale story. He wants us all in the red dresses and capes and wants to determine exactly what happens with your, quote, reproductive freedom. That women will die. Let me make something clear to you, okay? This is not a federal issue. The only reason abortion became a federal issue is because the United States Supreme Court made it one in Roe versus Wade by making up a constitutional right to it that did not exist. And while Trump overstates the revulsion in response to that decision, he's not wrong that liberal scholars and conservative ones alike for 50 years said that is not a principled decision. They made up a right that wasn't in there. It started with a privacy right that was found a few court decisions earlier that then got expanded just a little, then just a little more. And by the time they got to Roe versus Wade, they got the big Megillah. They had read something into the Constitution that did not exist, which was a right to an abortion. And women like me, who grew up not knowing anything other than Roe, may have come to believe it, that it was an actual right in there, just like due process and free speech and the Second Amendment rights we have. Well, it wasn't. And if you did any sort of homework, never mind went to law school or practiced law, you learned that pretty early in your life. The Supreme Court handed this issue back to the states where it belongs. And now we have a state-by-state experiment on abortion. It's true. Just like we have a state-by-state experiment on many, many issues. And the states represent their own particular cultures, which is why most people who live in Oregon or Washington State want nothing to do with moving to Mississippi and vice versa. And that's fine. That's America. That is the way the country was envisioned. And so, yeah, you are seeing abortion bans in some deep red states. And they may be too much for some people who happen to be pro-choice but found themselves living there anymore. And they've got the power of their feet in order to leave those states. Is it going to be easy for everybody? No, it's not. But for even those states, you are allowed to order the abortion drug. And you are allowed to go to other states. And the left says, oh, they're trying to ban you. Travel ban, so you can't leave a deep red state to go. Well, guess what? That's totally unconstitutional. Banning anybody from leaving one state and going to another is patently unconstitutional. Any such attempt to do so will be struck down 9-0 by the U.S. Supreme Court, including Thomas, including Alito, will be completely struck down. That is patently absurd and cannot be done. So just stop. I want you to know, women who are thinking about voting for Kamala based on abortion rights, she cannot pass an abortion law that covers all 50 states. She neither has the power nor the votes to do that. You've already lost that fight. I'm sorry. I know you're upset over it. I'm sorry to tell you, you already lost. You lost when the Dobbs decision came down. And no Supreme Court is going to overrule Dobbs. They may overrule a precedent of 50 years ago. They're not going to overrule one that was handed down 2 years ago. It's the same court, among other reasons. You're not going to win there. What you need to do is accept the half a loaf you've been given. And pro-lifers, my advice applies to you too. Accept the half a loaf you've been given. It's not a federal law. It's not a federal issue. It's not a constitutional issue. It's a states' rights issue. Get out of the states that have the bans if this is very important to you. Or get out of the states that allow abortion through all 9 months if you can't tolerate living in a state where that's happening down the block from you. Otherwise, be glad that we are back to the 50-state experiment that the founders envisioned, and that abortion will never be unlawful in all 50 states of the United States of America, ever. Nor will it have the permission slip it did under the Roe regime. That was yesterday. I'm telling you how things are today. And no vote in a presidential election will change any of that. If this is your issue, vote in your state elections. Who you elect as governor really matters. Who you elect as your state congressman or assemblyman and state senator really matters. What constitutional ballot initiative may be on your ballot box voting card this season really matters. That's what they did in Michigan. That's why they put Whitmer in there. That's why Whitmer won and was so popular in doing it. That's why overwhelmingly we saw people rush to the polls in 2022 because they were pissed off in the wake of Dobbs. And women had their say at the state levels and said, screw you, we don't like this, in the states where they felt that way. And there was a resettling. That issue is no longer at the federal level. So Mika Brzezinski, calm the F down. Listen to this lunatic. Listen to her.
Or do you want to vote for the woman who wants to try and figure out how to deal with these strict abortion bans, healthcare bans that have been put in place by Donald Trump? This is the moment for women. This is the final hour for women. Talking to Stevie Nicks this week, I'll quote her: be the lighthouse, women of America, be the beacon of warning, and talk to young people and get them out to the polls on this issue, because women, this is your future, and we are living it now. The stories are real right now. Yeah. Trump's America for women is happening now, and it's a nightmare.
I can't. I mean, in her defense, she's very dumb. There is zero chance she understands one word of what I just said. I'm pretty sure of that. So, you have to be somewhat understanding. She should not be in a position of prominence where she spreads her misinformation. We're against misinformation, remember? They should really remove her from that post ASAP. Okay, so that's the protect women nonsense. I want to talk about what they're now trying to do to Charlie Kirk. Liz Cheney, this pathetic fool. My God, she's gone nuts. TDS can really make you nuts. It can make the eyes go googly. It can make you really, truly deranged. So she and other leftists are very upset about Charlie Kirk on this program just 2 days ago, right? Was it 2 days ago Charlie was on? I'm losing all memory. Wednesday. Okay, let me show you the clip that is sending the left nuts from a program you guys watched 48 hours ago, SOT 19.
And she needs people to basically lie to their husbands, which they are promoting, by the way, which I find that entire advertising campaign
that ad.
So repulsive. It is so disastrous. It is just like
I'll show it in a minute.
It is the embodiment of the downfall of the American family. I think it's so gross. I think it's so just nauseating, where this wife is wearing you'll show it, wearing the American hat. She's coming in with her sweet husband, who probably works his tail off to make sure that she can go, and have a nice life and provides for the family. And then she lies to him saying, oh yeah, I'm going to vote for Trump. And then she votes for Kamala Harris as her little secret in the voting booth. Kamala Harris and her team believe that there will be millions of women that undermine their husbands and do so in a way that it's not detectable in the polling.
Absolutely nothing wrong with what he said. Absolutely nothing wrong. The Liz Cheneys of the world are trying to make this into some sort of, this is Charlie and a sexist, I don't know. This is what she tweeted out. Listen to this twit. By the way, Charlie Kirk is brilliant, Liz Cheney, and doesn't use his powers for evil like you. Make Donald Trump's closing argument. Women, you know what to do. Hashtag vote Kamala. Like he's just some Neanderthal who doesn't understand that women are equals and have equal rights. Why? Because he said that the man has likely provided for his family, and he's objecting to the man being lied to more specifically, Kamala Harris encouraging women to lie to their husbands if their husbands have suggested they vote Trump, which is to suggest dishonesty in a marital relationship. And it is fucked up. 16% of American wives are the primary wage earners in their relationships. 16. Okay, Liz, I happen to be one of them. I took zero offense to what Charlie Kirk said. I understood perfectly well what he meant. A husband, in many cases, is providing for the family, is, in most cases, the primary wage earner. And he is speaking to the dynamic between a man and a woman in a loving relationship, which does not include lying when you run into a difficult issue, especially over something like politics. It requires one person to say, honey, I need to vote for Trump, or I need to vote for Kamala, and I don't really care whether you like it or you don't. In Liz Cheney's world, in Kamala Harris's world, these women are too disempowered to stand up for themselves and be honest with their husbands. You get it? That's what's diminishing to women. It's Kamala Harris's sexism driving that message, Liz. No one else's. Charlie is calling her out on the disgusting connotation of what a modern day American marriage should look like. A disempowered, cowering woman who goes into the voting booth and lies to her husband because she can't trust him or his reaction if she just spills it to him that they have a disagreement. Screw you and your entire vision for this country. You don't know anything about healthy relationships or what female empowerment actually looks like. Okay, check on that one. I'm not done. This same side that's lecturing us about women and toxically masculine jerks like Charlie and Trump. That's the side of Liz Cheney. That's the side of Kamala. That's the side of AOC, who got a sit down, right? A sit down with Doug Emhoff. Was it with or about? Trying to get my notes in front of me so that I don't mislead you. And she decides, to share the following in Las Vegas, where she spoke to a crowd of students at the University of Nevada about Emhoff. This is not on cam, but I'm going to read you, according to the Daily Mail, what she said about him. It was not with him, it was about him. He's not afraid of this idea that you can let your girl shine, or as the case may be, to give her a shiner. Not afraid of that either, AOC. You should do a simple Google search and you'll see why. He has a lot of ideas of what being a man means, putting a woman down or putting people down, she says. But Doug is really the contrast, you see, suggesting that this is what the right thinks, that being a man means putting a woman down. But Doug really is the contrast to that. And he knows that by lifting up women, he's also lifting up his fellow men around him. Yes, I don't know whether lifting up the nanny and hurting her was part of how he reacted when he found out that he had impregnated, outside of his first marriage, their child's caregiver. And then she would later say that he caused her to miscarry their baby in a situation that looks like it required a high alert level visit by the police with sirens and lights to the home. I don't know whether there was lifting up by Doug Emhoff and what happened thereafter. I just know that he cheated on the wife. He got the nanny pregnant. The nanny apparently miscarried and blamed him for the miscarriage. Not so long before he wailed on with an open hand his next girlfriend at a red carpet black tie event, a professional, smart, vivacious woman with whom he had not been having an argument, but was pissed off she placed her hand on the shoulder of a valet. He's denied that latter allegation. I'm not sure whether that was lifting up. It kind of seems like smacking around, pushing around, but I'll leave it to the audience to decide, AOC. Oh, lecturers and arbiters of everything that is good for women. Thank you so much for looking out for us. That's AOC. All right, I've got to get to, I've got to get to this. I'm talking to my team. Okay. We have got to talk about what happened with election integrity today, because these stories are coming fast and furiously. And if we don't do an update on them, we're going to lose them. We're going to lose track of them. There was a remarkable situation happening in Pennsylvania. Okay. And I'm trying to get my facts in front of me. Here we are, the voting issues. Now, I am going to tee it up by showing you what happened with Hugh Hewitt on MSNBC with that complete, feckless, pathetic excuse for a, quote, journalist, Jonathan Capehart. Hugh went on with the Washington Post's Ruth Marcus. This is this morning. And got so angry, he got up and stormed off. Watch.
Is it me, or does it seem like this week Donald Trump is laying the groundwork for contesting the election by complaining that cheating was taking place in Pennsylvania by suing Bucks County for alleged irregularities? And
no election can be fair in Donald Trump's mind, unless Donald Trump wins it.
Bucks County was reversed by the court and instructed to open up extra days because they violated the law and told people to go home. So that lawsuit was brought by the Republican National Committee, and it was successful. The Supreme Court ruled that Glenn Youngkin was successful. We are news people, even though we have opinions, and we have to report the whole story if we bring up part of the story.
I'll let you keep going, Jonathan.
No, I don't appreciate being lectured about reporting when, Hugh, many times you come here saying lots of things that aren't.
I won't come
in
back,
fact.
Jonathan. I'm done. This is the most unfair election ad I have ever been a part of. You guys are working. That's fine. I'm done.
So, Ruth, you wrote a column this week.
You feckless little man. You're a feckless little man, Jonathan Capehart. How pathetic you are. Hugh Hewitt is the bomb. He handled that like a boss. That's exactly what he should have done. He was the only one there dealing in fact. Hugh Hewitt is a very successful attorney, practiced law for a very long time inside the government at very high levels, and knows his facts, and actually had done his homework on what happened in Bucks County and was trying to save these assholes from disinformation, misinformation. What Jonathan Capehart should have said was, thank you so much, Hugh. Out of the three of us, we have one who did his homework. Instead, he accuses him of showing up with his misinformation. And good for Hugh, just calmly, with fire, but calmly, taking his mic off and laying down a limit. I will not be treated like this. I don't want to be a part of your campaign ad, like he said. And instead of just admitting that he treated his guest terribly and he, Jonathan Capehart, behaved like a complete douchebag, he pretended like it hadn't happened and Hugh was the problem. You're the problem, MSNBC. You are 100% the problem. I'm very proud of of Hugh, and I'm very proud to know him. Pennsylvania voter issues. There were problems in Bucks County, and they are being handled now as a result of a Trump lawsuit that he won. Okay, so that he was absolutely right. But now listen to this. Okay, so this is in the news today. This is reported by Vote Beat, which is a nonprofit news organization. And Axios did an article on them in 2022 saying they are the only outlet in America that covers local voting exclusively. They report that 2 Pennsylvania counties have identified an Arizona-based company as the source of thousands of last-minute voter registration applications that are now under investigation. Monroe County, around 30 forms this company was responsible for submitting, including mail ballot applications, were, quote, deemed irregular and were included in what, you don't have to believe just the Monroe County officials. The district's attorney is now describing in a Facebook post several that were, quote, fraudulent. They were fraudulent and not authorized by the person named as applicants. So try to stay with me. There is a company that is accused of registering voters in Pennsylvania's Monroe County with ballots, applications that have been deemed irregular and which the DA's office says were fraudulent and not authorized by the persons named as applicants. In at least one case, the applicant is dead. That's one county in Pennsylvania. There is another county. Neither of these are the things Hugh was talking about. This is additional stuff. York County, where the chief clerk, Greg Monsky, confirmed to Vote Beat on Wednesday that this outside group, this Arizona-based company, it's called Field and Media Corps, submitted the forms that the county there is now investigating. In a press release on Wednesday, the county said that of the 3,087 applications under review, the county has found that roughly 47% were legitimate. Less than half were legitimate. 29% had incomplete information, and 24% were undergoing further review by the York County District Attorney. They're getting DAs involved. That is very serious. This is not some made up story by election deniers. This is the DAs in these counties saying we've got serious concerns about ballot or application integrity and using the F word in at least Monroe. Fraudulent. This company, Field Media Corps, which conducts voter registration and outreach programs, is run by a man who is from, it looks like, Mesa, Arizona, and a longtime voting activist in Arizona. He's clearly a Kamala supporter based on his social media. And he says that his company has not heard from any county officials in Pennsylvania or received any info about problems with the forms that his group submitted there, but he says his company will fully cooperate with any investigation in Pennsylvania. He says they have a zero tolerance policy for workers who submit fraudulent forms. The company is reportedly not currently doing work in Pennsylvania as voter registration has passed. Their work there appears to be done. But their voter registration efforts have previously been flagged in Arizona, yet another swing state. Last year, 2 counties there flagged voter registration forms from this company and sent them to the Arizona Attorney General's office for investigation, according to the AG's spokesperson, Richie Taylor. There was an investigation in Maricopa County as well. It's unclear what happened with that. This man who runs this company, Field Media Corps, says that the Maricopa County Attorney's Office contacted his company last year in connection with an investigation into 2 canvassers the company employed. Field Media Corps says it fired those 2 workers. This election cycle, still in Arizona, the Maricopa County Recorder's Office has flagged this same company, Field Corps, the parent company of Field and Media Corps, for submitting a high percentage of incomplete or inaccurate forms. I mean, this is unbelievable. I mean, it's totally believable, but you need to know this because, you're not even allowed to say this stuff in some broadcast channels. VoteBeat, this news organization that's breaking this news, says former President Donald Trump this week alluded to the Pennsylvania county's announcements and social media posts, saying he falsely claimed that fake ballots had been found in Pennsylvania. I mean, I suppose you could say that the guy who's dead, whatever, but okay. But they're saying, I think they're trying to make the distinction between voting and getting an application to vote when you're not legit. Election experts push back, noting that the applications were flagged by election officials as potentially problematic, a sign the system is working, and that no actual ballots were involved. Then they go on to say this. A third Pennsylvania county has just concluded an investigation. This is Lancaster County. And their officials declined to identify the group or person who submitted the 2,500 voter registration forms that they are investigating there. That's a third Pennsylvania county, Lancaster County, where they're investigating 2,500 voter registration applications. And there again, the DA is involved. Heather Adams, a Republican, announced at a press conference last week, roughly 60% of the applications that her detectives have reviewed so far were allegedly fraudulent. What? Roughly 60%? While others, she said, were legitimate. She has since described, quote, hundreds of the applications as fraudulent, but has not given an exact number or announced any criminal charges related to the investigation. Selena Zito posting on Twitter, this Field and Media Corps website is down. We confirmed that today. And calls to their listed number have gone unreturned. Zito also noting that the company's clients have included Biden-Harris, Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, and other Arizona Democrats. This is not to imply that every vote, every ballot, or this election is being stolen. But when you are told that there is absolutely no basis to suspect voter fraud or attempts at it. You should remember this report. You know, here at the Megyn Kelly Show, we have never said anything other than that Trump lost the 2020 election. And I know a lot of my audience disagrees with me on that. But this, how do you ignore this? It's one thing when you say to Trump, show me the evidence, and he doesn't do it. It's quite another when you've got 3 DAs in 3 different Pennsylvania counties using the F word and doing investigations on ballots that they say are not legit or that appear to be illegitimate. Okay, one more thing. Follow up now to the White House's altering of the transcript in connection with President Biden's statement that Trump supporters are garbage, which has caused a lot of heat, as you know, for the White House and Kamala Harris. As you're aware, President Biden said the remarks. Here they are.
Or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization is seen as unconscionable, and it's un-American.
Then the White House issued a transcript, in quotes, of his remarks that had him say, the only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters, except there's an apostrophe after the R in supporter and before the S, as though he's saying his supporter issued garbage, as opposed to his supporters are garbage. That's exactly the opposite of what he said. We all know, we listened to it. It was very clear. Really only a couple of news organizations are running with his bullshit explanation. But it is weird to see the transcript try to run cover for him. And now that's spilled out into the open about how that happened. It wasn't the White House stenographer. And actually, the White House stenographer's office is PO'd because this was done by the White House press office. Karine Jean-Pierre, spokesperson Andrew Bates, who's just a paid liar. They are the ones, their office. And listen to this, according to the Associated Press. White House press officials altered the official transcript, drawing objections from the federal workers who document such remarks for posterity. By the way, this may be a crime under the Presidential Records Act. Let's see if they get prosecuted the same way Trump got prosecuted for allegedly violating the PRA. All right? Because you violate the PRA, I think they take it very seriously in this Department of Justice. Let's see what happens to Andrew Bates or whoever actually did it. It was the White House press office that put in the apostrophe, says the AP. The change was made after the press office, quote, conferred with the president, according to an internal email from the head of the stenographer's office that was obtained by the AP. What happened was the press office, asked the stenographers to quickly produce a transcript of the remarks. The 2-person stenography team, a typer and a proofer, said any edit would have to be approved by our supervisor. But the supervisor was not immediately available. So the press office went ahead and altered it themselves and then published the altered transcript on the White House website and distributed it in an effort to tamp down the story. Then the supervisor got wind of the matter and called the press office and called out the way they handled this, saying it was, quote, a breach of protocol and spoliation, meaning spoiling, of transcript integrity between the stenography and the press offices. And almost undoubtedly, it was the stenographer's office that leaked this story. Who else would have leaked this? They're pissed that their actual recitation of his remarks was messed with by these losers over in the comms department. The supervisor is a career employee of the White House and raised the concerns about the press office action in an email to the White House communications director, Ben LaBolt, and press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, saying, regardless of urgency, it's essential to our transcript's authenticity and legitimacy that we adhere to consistent protocol for requesting edits, approval, and release. The supervisor declined to comment to the AP, though in this reporter's opinion, Megyn Kelly was clearly the source for all of this. Asked to comment, Andrew Bates, who posted the altered version on X, did not address the alteration of the transcript, but simply said the president confirmed in his tweet that he was addressing the hateful rhetoric from the comedian that was reflected in the transcript. This is disgusting. It is yet another example of the people around President Biden trying to run cover for him. And They work for us. That's what's so annoying about this. We pay their salaries. We're paying them to lie to us and violate the law in this way. We all know what the truth is. We heard with our ears. And now are all of those media organizations that did try to run cover for Biden, like Politico and the Washington Post, going to go back and correct their reporting where they tried to say, well, it's unclear. It really comes down to the apostrophe. The apostrophe was inserted not by the official recorders of what the president says. It was inserted by the partisan hacks who do comms for him, WAPO and Politico. Get your shit together, correct your reports, and report the truth. It's not hard. Up next, U.S. Senate candidate Tim Sheehy. 4 years of crushing interest rates, runaway inflation, and reckless government spending. And who's paying the price? You are. You might have bills stacking up, debt collectors on your back, and you might barely be able to keep food on the table. Done with Debt can be a way out. They have developed new, aggressive strategies designed to get you out of debt permanently without bankruptcy or loans. Done with Debt stands between you and your bill collectors. They can go head-to-head with these guys, getting balances reduced, interest rates slashed, and penalties stopped. They can create a plan to end your debt fast and put more money in your pocket every month. And right now, Done with Debt is accepting new clients. But you do need to act fast because some credit relief programs expire. Before you even make another payment, consider a visit to donewithdebt.com or just call 1-888-322-1054 right now. 1-888-322-1054. Speak with one of their debt relief strategists for free. Go to donewithdebt.com. That's donewithdebt.com. This year, supply chain issues have been more prevalent than ever. Whether it's the result of natural disasters like Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton, global conflict, or inflation, the impacts are being felt everywhere. While they sometimes are a minor inconvenience, delays in accessing essential medications can become catastrophic. The U.S. relies on overseas sources for more than 80% of its generic medications. So what happens when there are delays? Or what if supplies are cut off? How will you care for your loved ones and yourself? The Jase case offers peace of mind for you and your family in the face of delays, shortages, and disasters. This is an emergency medication kit containing 5 life-saving antibiotics that treat the most common and deadly bacterial infections. Simply complete a quick online evaluation to ensure you're prepared. The Jase case can also be customized with add-ons like ivermectin, EpiPens, and more. Don't wait. Consider preparing right now. Receive a discount on your Jase case by visiting jase.com and entering promo code MK at checkout. That's promo code MK at jase.com, ensuring you have the right medications exactly when you need them. The Senate race in Montana may be one of the most important races in the country, as it could determine which party gains control of the Senate. Incumbent Democrat Jon Tester has managed to hold on to his seat the last 18 years, despite the fact that every other statewide office is held by a Republican. Trump won Montana by 16 points in 2020, so the GOP's feeling a little bullish about this time around. The GOP candidate taking center stage in that race is Tim Sheehy. He's a father, entrepreneur, and former Navy SEAL, and he joins me now. Tim, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Megyn. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, as somebody who has a place in Montana for the better part of the last 10 years, you're kind of potentially my next senator if you win this race, at least for a couple months of the year. So I'm interested in this. Look, I'm going to get right to it because I know your time is short. You're winning, according to most of the polls. But the Democrats, according to a new report just today in Axios, haven't given up on this race. Then they're feeling cautiously optimistic that they can defeat you, according to Axios, based on, quote, a wave of negative ads about the combat record of yours, Tim Sheehy. Okay, so let's get to it so the audience knows what we're talking about. They are alleging that you lied about being shot when you were serving our country, which you did honorably in Iraq and Afghanistan, and you received a Purple Heart and you received a Bronze Star, that you said you received a gunshot wound to the arm over there, not for stolen valor. This isn't one of those things, but that, in fact, you received it in a state park when your gun dropped and you shot yourself in the arm, and they have a park ranger who swears you told her that, and that you just made up having taken a bullet in the arm when you were actually serving the country. So what's the truth?
Yeah, well, I mean, their entire campaign against me has been based on character assassination. I mean, that's all it's been since the beginning, because Jon Tester's been a rubber stamp for Biden Harris the entire time they've been in office, voted to impeach Trump twice, has consistently put America first policies, America last every single time. And, every time he's run, they spend hundreds of millions of dollars in this state, and they have one playbook, and that is to literally just smear the opponent to the point where they're unrecognizable. And they're doing the same thing to me. And of course, Jon Tester loves to pose as a friend of veterans. Well, the first time ever he's run against a veteran, all they've been focused on is trying to shred my military record. And of course, I have letters and statements signed by dozens of folks that serve with me saying, my military service was honorable, was fantastic, was a good leader, was a great teammate. And the truth is, during an insurgency war like we were fighting Afghanistan for 20 years, insurgency is messy. And, one of the most challenging parts we had as SEAL teams over my several deployments was we would have Afghan forces embedded with us. And that means you're fighting not always alongside just a bunch of highly trained Navy SEALs. Much of the time, you are outnumbered by your own friendly partner force, sometimes 10 to 1, sometimes 20 to 1. You'll have hundreds of Afghans that you're responsible for training and then putting into combat. And we call those green on blue incidents, which actually were very, very common, where you'd have Afghans who either intentionally or unintentionally would end up shooting friendly forces. Sometimes they just put their weapons on full auto and start shooting in whatever direction they felt like. So it was a hazardous environment where we're dealing with, of course, actual hostile forces who were fighting, Taliban, Al-Qaeda, Haqqani Network, et cetera. But half the time, we've also got to have one eyeball looking at our partner forces. And, when those incidents would happen, everyone remembers, the Pat Tillman incident, unfortunately, very, very clearly, where it was a tragedy, where Pat was killed by friendly fire. And of course, that investigation ensues and ends up destroying an entire command because they tear everything apart, investigate everybody all day long, every day. And even if the investigation proves nothing happened, the way the military works, as you well know, those investigations stick with those people for the rest of their lives and their career, and oftentimes end those careers. And in fact, our task force, that deployment, had one of those incidents, that ended up being a career ender for a lot of guys. So, as a team commander, you want to keep your team intact. We were at about half strength at this point in our deployment. We'd had many teammates wounded and sent home. And me as the team commander, there was in no position to be carted off the battlefield. Many of us were injured multiple times. We don't report that simply because we're going to stay in the fight, stay with our team. We're going to finish our deployment and do our job. So unless those injuries are life-threatening, of course, if you've lost a limb like some of our teammates had, or there's a severe injury, you're going to deal with that because that person has to be cared for. But otherwise, you just keep on moving. So it's unfortunate they decided to make this a focal point because it's a distraction, but that's what their entire campaign is about. It's about distractions because they can't focus on the issues that Jon Tester's a loyal Chuck Schumer vote every single time.
So just to be clear, did you shoot yourself in the arm?
No, that was never the allegation. The point is, it was a friendly fire ricochet downrange that wasn't reported at the time. And after having
but they're saying, just so I'm clear, that they're saying, and I don't want to harp on this, I just want to give you the chance to explain yourself because this is their closing message. It's all about this incident. So if voters are confused, you're going to explain it to them. They're saying that you were in a park, Glacier Park, that you dropped your weapon, that it went off inadvertently and it shot you in the arm, and that there's a park ranger saying she spoke to you about that. And it looks like you spoke to the Washington Post and you said that you lied when you told the park ranger about this. So which is it? Like, did you shoot yourself in the arm inadvertently in Glacier Park?
No, we've discussed this at length, repeatedly with every media outlet for the last year. It's been beat to death. The point was, at the time, I was injured and went to the hospital. They required a police report because any gunshot wound requires a police report of any kind. And they said, we have to file this. We have to report this to law enforcement. And still having active team members, in the service who were involved in it at that time, I simply said, well, this is an old wound. They said, no, we have to report this as a gunshot wound, to law enforcement. So, I said, well, okay, fine. It was an accident. Even the Sportsman's Roots Sports Shooting Foundations have even said it's literally impossible to have that happen. It wouldn't work.
But
and a weapon of that size had it happen.
Did you have a wound,
no.
Tim, in the park?
No. Yes, I fell and injured my arm when we were hiking. So that's why I went, because I could feel the bullet get dislodged when I fell on the arm. You could feel the bullet get dislodged, and then went to the ER to say, hey, look, I've got internal bleeding going on here. I've injured my arm. Can you take a look at this? Make sure there's nothing serious going on here. And then
are there
as
medical
a result,
records where the ER can say we did not treat a gunshot wound?
Well, there isn't. I mean, that's the point. You go in, you check on it, and you leave. There's not an extensive medical record for any of this stuff. And unfortunately, that's the crux of this, is there's just not a whole lot to talk about. They decided to take this one report from a park ranger that I gave him that report. I stood in the parking lot, said, hey, this is what happened, in 5 minutes, we go on our way. And they decided to make that, the focal point of all this.
So confusing. This park ranger doesn't seem to be a Republican. Kim Peach is her name. She once mocked former President Donald Trump.
It's a guy.
I guess it's a him. Okay, his name is Kim. He once mocked Donald Trump. So yeah, I understand. And then you had a lot of Navy SEALs come out and say, you're the picture of integrity. This is such BS. And that those who are attacking you have defined their post-military lives, because there's another guy, by criticizing the SEAL community. So look, I think the bottom line is, like, people are trying to figure out what's going to happen with Montana in this race, and they're going to look at you on the issues. And there is a big delta between you and your opponent. So, Tim, one of our main issues here, mine on this show, is whether we're going to allow boys into girls' sports, whether we're going to support these Biden revisions to Title IX. It seems very clear that your opponent is 100% on the wrong side of all of these issues. He supported this a terrible Equality Act. How can this be? How can a guy who represents Montana for 18 years be so wrong-headed on that particular issue?
Well, he's a rubber stamp vote for everything the left wants. That's why. I mean, he doesn't ask any questions. He doesn't push back. He doesn't stand up for Montana or for common sense policies. Whatever Chuck Schumer puts in front of him, or the Biden-Harris administration has put in front of him, he rubber stamps, he signs, and moves on. So it's no surprise he's done that as well. And my campaign slogan from the beginning has been common sense. Montanans want common sense back from the government. They want a secure border, safe streets, cheap gas, cops are good, criminals are bad, boys are boys, girls are girls. Jon Tester has not voted for any of those things. As a matter of fact, as you said, he stood up actively supporting letting boys into girls' locker rooms. So Montanans don't like that. They're making that clear in the polls, and they're going to show us on Tuesday they don't like it.
He's voted 91% with Joe Biden, and via CNN, just in October, he would not say whether he's voting for Kamala Harris. Is there any chance he's not voting for Kamala Harris?
Well, you got to remember, as chair of the DSCC, he recruited Kamala Harris into the Senate in 2015. So, that's been his record with Kamala Harris, is bringing her into the national political spotlight. And then, of course, he's been a loyal supporter for every piece of Biden-Harris legislation there is. And 91% isn't actually really accurate. It's closer to 95%. But when you look at actually the bills that matter, when it actually matters, when his vote has been the deciding vote, it's been every single time. There's messaging bills, and Chuck Schumer is masterful at making sure he architects these messaging bills. So whenever possible, he gives these battleground senators an outlet to pretend they're independents and moderates. The truth is, every time his votes mattered, it's been a rubber stamp for the Biden-Harris agenda, and he's brought us to where we are today. So he's almost single-handedly responsible for all the bills that Kamala Harris has been the tiebreaker on for the last 3.5 years. And that's his voting record.
What does he say on the trans thing? Because, I'm looking at his record. He voted against the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act of 2023. It's very clear. He wants the boys in the girls' locker rooms, which is the Equality Act, in their bathrooms. Does he deny it?
Of course he does. Just like Hugh Hewitt got up and walked off the show in your previous segment, the media wraps such a blanket around this guy. You can never actually get to the truth on it. His votes say one thing, and then he either says the exact opposite or refuses to talk about any of it. And the Montana media and the national media run interference for him on all these issues. They run interference for him on anything and prevent him from having to answer for the votes that he takes. So he doesn't say anything about it because that's his magic. He goes to D.C. and votes for these policies, then comes home and says nothing and lets the media do his work for him. And of course, the hundreds of millions of dollars of dark money that come in the state do the work for him, because he can't actually stand up and defend his votes. So he lets everyone else do it for him and hides behind $100 million of dark money that keeps him in office.
Now, what you were saying makes a lot of sense. Cheap gas, cops are good, criminals are bad. Boys out of girl sports, all of that makes perfect sense. And, keep the criminals out from crossing our southern border as well. His main piece of way of attack against you seems to be the thing we discussed, and also that you're an outsider. He wants, because you grew up in a different state. What other state? I can't remember what state you were raised in.
Minnesota.
Okay, Minnesota, not too far away. So you were raised in Minnesota, And you only moved to Montana in like 2014, around there. And so he wants people to think you're an outsider. Now, I know this from owning property in Montana. Montana's got like a lot of so-called outsiders living in it right now. It's a small state population-wise. But have you been getting any feedback that that actually is a potential problem for you?
Listen, it's something that they walk out nationally, the whole carpetbagger label. They want to label everybody with that because, it's an easy way for them to try to smear the opponent. The truth is, I think most Montanans understand that whether you come here, as long as you embody the values that Montana stands for and that Montana believes in, they're ready to vote for you regardless. And we have multiple office holders around state that were not born here. But for Jon Tester, that's been his home base for years, runs back to, well, I've been here 3 generations. Like, okay, well, it's great that your great grandfather came here. Well, mine didn't. And after serving my country in war for a decade, and my wife also is a Marine Corps officer, she fought in the war. We met in the military. We chose to make this our home and build our businesses here and have our children here. So after 10 years of living here, creating hundreds of jobs here and being a part of the community, we were asked to consider running in this race, and we did. So I think, those attacks really kind of ring hollow because a lot of Montanans that are now voters here, they weren't born here. And they're sick and tired of being told that their vote doesn't count, that their voice doesn't count, and that if you didn't come here, you shouldn't have a say in how things are run. And I think it's a dangerous line for the Democrat Party in Montana to keep pushing down, because what it does is it really alienates the people who are sick and tired of being told, if your birth certificate was in a different state, I couldn't control where my mother's womb was when I came out of it. That's not something I had control over. So the fact that it was in a different state, it wasn't something I could control, but I could control where I chose to live and raise my family and build my businesses. So, I don't think it's a particularly effective line of attack. I think Montanans have shown over and over again, they're more focused on the candidate, what the policies they stand for, than they are on where they happen to have been born.
On your agenda, just a couple of other things. You've pledged to end the woke social agenda infecting schools, teach kids how to think, not what to think, and saying it's important to have more choice in our education system. I know you got to run. Just lastly, you signed the term limits pledge. And what does that mean, Tim?
Well, it's important that we have a citizen government. I mean, that's what our framers imagined. I'm a history guy. I'm very passionate about our founding fathers and how they imagined our constitutional republic to function. Because, we always throw around these words democracy and, we're a democracy this, democracy that. Well, constitutional republic is actually what our form of government is. We're a constitutional republic. And the way that functions is actually very different than a pure democracy. And the framers imagined it that way. And one of the things that was key to that is citizen government. People who have life experience, business, soldiers, military, fathers, farmers, family men, who decide to go to government, bring a fresh perspective from the real world, which is, the Beltway is not the real world. It's like an alternate universe that people live in. Bring perspectives from the real world to government, make sure that government is acting in a responsive manner to the people, because ultimately it's of the people, by the people, for the people, and keeping that fresh blood in our government throughout. And I think, me signing the term limits pledge was one more nod in that direction to say, this permanent political class that we started to have in this country, where people go there and they stay there literally until they die in office. They'll be there for decades on end. I mean, Joe Biden's been running for president for like 40 years now. That has to end.
How did Dianne Feinstein?
Yeah, exactly. So having fresh blood in there with fresh ideas, and also remembering, with the perspective of a citizen, that the government works for us, not the other way around. The government is accountable to us, not the other way around. At least that's the way it's supposed to be. So I think having fresh people in government helps maintain, or at least bring back, that perspective, and that's what I hope to do.
Well, I love the idea of Montanans in general heading to Washington, because you know how they say you got to touch grass to sort of keep your base on like what matters in life. You spend 2 days in Montana and you've got that in you. So whether you were born and raised there or whether you got there in 2014, like I did too, by the way, you can feel it. All the best to you. We'll be watching on Tuesday night.
All right. Thank you.
Tim Sheehy, everybody. He could be the one who makes the difference, right? Because the Republicans are going to win West Virginia, and that brings them to 50-50. And this is their next best option to win Montana, which would put them with a majority if they can hold all their other seats.